Hello and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. I'm Claire Pryde, filling in for Annette Young. Coming up, women in Sri Lanka are unwittingly being injected with contraceptives. This before taking up work in the Gulf to support their families. We meet some of the women fighting against deeply entrenched gender bias in South Korea. And to talk about female leaders in Asia and the backlash they face, I'll be joined by Newcastle University's Sarah Liu. We start with recruitment agencies in Sri Lanka making female migrant workers take contraceptives. Sometimes the women don't even realise what they've been injected with. This way, employers in the Gulf needn't worry about workers getting pregnant. But some migration experts say contraceptives also serve the purpose of covering up potential sexual assaults. Nicolas Bertrand and Selena Sykes report.
In the Sri Lankan capital Colombo, around 10 planes take off each day for direct flights heading to Gulf countries. Every year, around 250,000 Sri Lankans make the journey to work in countries such as Saudi Arabia, Kuwait and Qatar. Usually for a minimum of 2 years as labourers, cleaners and kitchen staff. Women who sign up to recruitment agencies all tell the same story of being injected with an unknown substance.
I don't know what they injected me with. The doctor did it during the medical examination.
The drug is a strong contraceptive. In the city centre, dozens of agencies recruit women willing to travel tens of thousands of miles to work. Most centres refuse to comment on the use of birth control injections. The head of this agency said the drug Depo-Provera is administered to female recruitees. It can be bought for just €3 and is recommended by Gulf countries, who instruct agencies on how to prepare workers heading to the region. Women who refuse the injection can't get a job in the Gulf.
This type of injection, definitely they want to put. Without medical, nobody can travel Gulf country.
The contraceptive is said to last 3 months, but in many cases the drug keeps women sterile for much longer and can weaken bones and increase the risk of breast cancer. These two women have recently returned from Jordan and Saudi Arabia, where they worked as cleaners. They too were unknowingly injected with contraceptives and immediately saw an effect on their health.
Yes, I had the injection, but they didn't tell me what it was. They said it was a vaccination. They said there wouldn't be any side effects, but now I have pain in my legs and in my hands caused by the injection, and I get my period 2 or 3 times a month.
The contraceptive is believed to have been given to thousands of Sri Lankan household workers. According to this expert, it serves a double purpose: to guarantee prospective employers that workers will not get pregnant and to cover up potential sexual assaults.
And if you're within that coverage period, because you have taken a contraception, you're okay. But that's only one small segment. There's only one small segment. What about the whole trauma that has gone through? And she lives with that trauma for the rest of her life.
The Sri Lankan government denies any women have taken contraceptive injections against their will. Good relations with Gulf countries are important. They pay more than €5 billion in salaries for Sri Lankan workers every year, a massive boost to the country's economy.
Now, the word feminism in many parts of the world still has a negative connotation. That's the case, for example, in South Korea. But more and more women there are talking about women's rights openly. There's even a feminist cafe in Seoul. France 24's Yena Lee went there and she met other South Korean women fighting against deeply entrenched gender bias.
A hobby dominated by men no longer. An estimated 40-something% of gamers in South Korea are women. Despite this, they are subject to trolls and online abuse if they reveal their gender.
Male gamers use words that refer to genitalia to speak about female players and female characters.
These female gamers belong to a feminist collective that's demanding a change in attitudes in the gaming industry.
The content of gaming activities, from the designing of the characters to industry events, is all geared towards men.
But the feminist revival isn't just happening online. Over 1,000 feminist works are on display at this book cafe. Opened less than a year ago, it already has dedicated customers who come to discuss feminist issues, such as abortion and the Me Too movement.
These days, the word feminism provokes a sort of convulsion. But here we can talk about feminist issues and develop our ideas together.
Solidarity is also the driving force behind this lawyer's motivation. Ian might not have decades of experience in the courtroom, but she is a survivor of workplace harassment. In 2010, she successfully sued her former employer, Samsung, and now she specializes in harassment cases. This client has brought in CCTV footage of the night she says she was assaulted by a colleague. We see her in the white jeans with her alleged perpetrator. But the video worked in the man's favor in court, and the two women are waiting for an appeal.
Does she take the pill? How many guys has she dated? Is she a divorcee? In court, they bring up all of the woman's private life. I hope they won't use these methods anymore.
Lee says there needs to be an educational and cultural reform for people to take assault and harassment cases seriously. Though a small revolution is on its way, it's an uphill battle for feminists in a country that ranks last on The Economist's glass ceiling index.
Now, just to be clear, the index mentioned at the end of that report ranks the best and worst countries to be a working woman. South Korea has the biggest gender pay gap in the OECD. Joining me now to talk more about women's rights in South Korea and in the region as a whole is Sarah Liu. She's a lecturer in comparative politics at Newcastle University in the UK. Hello, thank you very much indeed for being with us, Sarah. Now, gender equality is a long way off in South Korea. Women earn quite a bit less. Men don't tend to do a lot of housework. There aren't many female CEOs, etc. Yet South Korean voters elected a female president in 2012. How do you explain that?
Well, South Korea is a very unusual case because if you look at the former president of South Korea, Park, she was actually a daughter of a former male political leader in South Korea as well. So she had that kinship connection that allowed her to climb up to the top of the political ladder. So her former position as South Korean president is no indicator of gender equality in South Korea.
What about other female leaders in the region? I mean, Thailand had one, Taiwan has a female leader. Why is that? And what difference does having a female leader make in terms of policies addressing gender inequality?
Many Asian countries, like the ones that you've mentioned, have quotas where a certain percentage of seats are reserved for women. So political parties are encouraged to nominate women. And that could be one of the reasons why we particularly see so many women in Asian politics. And generally speaking, women political leaders are more likely than male political leaders to pass women-friendly policies. For example, the president of Taiwan, Tsai Ing-wen, she's the first female president of Taiwan, and she has recently proposed gender equality and marriage equality laws. So Taiwan could be the very first country in Asia to pass a law on marriage equality. So that's one of the differences that female heads of state could make. However, in my research, again, shows that women's impact in Asia is very limited beyond political institutions.
And what about the role of, in terms of activism, the more female leaders there are, the more activism there is, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. Asia has made much progress in the political representation of women, but if you look at the actual impact of Asian women leaders on society as a whole, Asia's gender equality still has a long way to go. And my research shows that there's a big divergence between women's political status and women's social status in Asia. For instance, many Asian countries that have had women as female heads of state, as the ones that you mentioned, they still prefer sons over daughters. So when some preference still exists and women's social status continues to remain low, it's hard for women to envision themselves as equal to male counterparts.
You go as far as talking about a backlash. Tell us more.
Yes. So what I found in my research is that Asian legislators actually created a backlash for Asian women's political participation. And one explanation could be that when gender equality doesn't improve, even when women become leaders, their presence becomes tokenistic. So female voters might not be satisfied when women politicians don't use their power to advocate for women's rights. For example, Taiwan's first female president, her cabinet only includes 4 women, which is notably fewer than previous cabinets led by men. And as long as there is a disconnection between women's political presence and what women actually do with their power in terms of advocating for gender equality, there is little reason for women to suddenly get inspired to be politically active.
So what needs to happen then for women in Asia to achieve real gender equality?
Asian countries need to make sure that both women and men politicians who claim that they care about women's rights are held accountable by proposing and passing women-friendly policies. Countries also need to make sure that these women-friendly policies are practiced in reality. For example, Singapore offers government-paid maternity leave, but do Singaporean women really go on leave? Or do women worry about the implications of going on leave, such as the potential to lose their jobs or the delay in their promotions? Individuals in Asia also need to challenge the gender norms.
All right, thank you very much, Sarah. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you for joining us there from the UK. That's it for this week's show. You can connect with us via our Facebook page, that's France24.51%, or send us a tweet at _51%. Thank you for all your feedback so far. Do keep those comments coming in and join us again next week.